I'm delighted to welcome Josephine Perry to the Non-Perfect Dad YouTube channel. Josephine, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's brilliant. Now, I accidentally, full confession, stumbled across Josephine because I bought her book, this book here. We all referred to it a number of times, totally by mistake, because it's got a very similar title to a book that a good friend of mine, Dr. Susanna Brown, suggested. And I'm really, really glad that I kept it, looked into it, and then we kind of shared that on Twitter, and Josephine got back to me. Josephine, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit of potted history about your background and where you are at today.
Cool. So I'm a sports psychologist and have been for the last 5 years. Before that, I had what I call my grown-up city job, where I worked as a communications director in the healthcare industry. And at 37, needed a complete lifestyle change, was burnt out looking back at it. And I do triathlon is my sport. And I went to Melbourne to do Ironman Melbourne. And I was standing on the beach that morning, and I'd done all my training in 20-metre pools in London, which were nice and flat and calm. And I was standing on the beach, and I have never seen waves the size of these waves. And even the Aussies were looking brick green, a bit terrified. And the guy on the tannoy said, "You can't control those conditions, but you can control how you feel about them." And to me, it was the first time, it was a proper light bulb moment of, oh yeah, I actually have some control over this. This is about how I choose to approach what I'm about to do, rather than just rolling along with it. And it worked. I got in the water, I swam, no idea where I came out, somewhere miles down the beach. But I actually had a brilliant race. And it just really got my mind whirring that I'm not particularly athletic. I'd never say I'm talented in sport. I've got everywhere just by doing a lot of training. But it was the first time I thought, actually, my mind can make a really big deal and it can change things. I can use it to feel better about what I do and to enjoy it more. So I started looking into sports psychology, and tallied along with not having a great time at work and wanting to do something different. It was a really good opportunity to kind of throw it all in, go back to university and retrain.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Were you not worried about sharks? So that's you tell that story.
Yeah, that worried me too. To be fair, I don't think even sharks would have wanted to go.
Yeah, at least the conditions meant that was like, brilliant. I love that story. I've got so much more to ask you. So, you worked in the city, high-flying job, comms job, working in a big corporation. One of the things that I talk to parents a lot is that the mental skills that sport can teach us can help our kids thrive in any environment, and the crossover is massive.
Yeah.
The team that you managed, what skills do you wish that they'd picked up from sport when they were kids, and which skills are you glad that they'd picked up in their journey in the corporate world?
I think what I see in a lot of the athletes I work with that's brilliant in the business world is that tenacity to get something done. When you decide you're going to do it, find a way to do it. And I think that transfers over really well. But also not being like a solitary thing, that the teamwork you get if you're doing team sport, or even if you're doing individual sport, but you're working with other people or you're training together, is phenomenal for being able to work effectively in business. And I mean, I had a team of, I think, 15, 16 people, but actually, because we were communications, our job was to communicate with everybody in the entire organisation and to help other people communicate their own needs. So you needed to be able to be part of lots of teams, and you needed to be able to really easily engage with somebody. And one of the things I love about working in sport is when you meet somebody, you go to a networking event or you're stuck in a queue for something, you no longer ask what somebody does. It's not all about the job. But when you're in sport, you can ask, what do you love about sport? What's your sport? What's your passion? And that brings out a whole new side to people. And actually, I find sport connects people phenomenally in business. I have a brilliant example of my husband, who is not into football at all. He's Australian. He's much more into kind of other sports. But He listens to the football scores at a weekend because he knows on a Monday morning when he goes into work and he's in a big bank, that's what people will be talking about, and that helps connect them. So it gives you a really good social capital to engage with people. And so whatever your sport is, it gives you a really nice connection and link to people that you don't normally get outside. So it's not just the physical skills of what transfers over, but it's those connection skills and that sense of belonging to something.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think when I think of former professional athletes that I know who get on well and have lots of fingers and lots of pies and are thriving post sport, they're really good at just speaking to everybody and anybody who comes up to them. There is something, like you say, about having a multifaceted levels of sport, because you're in your school team, your local club team, you've got different styles of coaching. You need to learn to relate to adults in different ways, your peers in different ways, and get involved in junior coaching. That's how I got into sport. I just got involved in doing some junior coaching for my Duke of Edinburgh, I think it was. And that just gives you that connection. I love that. Now, one of the things, Josie, that I talk to parents a lot is our real privileged opportunity to influence the mindset skills of our children.
Yeah.
What if you had a magic wand, if you could get all the sports parents in the world into one Zoom meeting, we wouldn't say one stadium anymore, we'd talk about one Zoom. What would be your top three if you were given 30 minutes to talk to sports parents about strategies, about mindset? Where would you start? What would be your favourite?
I guess I would go back to, there is a theory of motivation that I love, and I base a lot of what I do around it, and it's called self-determination theory. And in very short terms, it basically says to feel self-motivated to go out and achieve anything, and whatever your area is, you need 3 pillars in place. One of those is autonomy, so you're making your own choices. One of those is a sense of community, so that sense of belonging and being part of something. And the third one is to feel competent in what you're doing. And if parents can help with those 3, then actually the child can then go off and do it on their own. They need to know the parent is there and that there is somebody they can come back to, and that gives them that real sense of security and attachment. But actually, if you help your child develop those 3 areas, then they can fly. And the one that I notice parents struggle with the most is the autonomy.
So unpack that. What does that look like?
So that's the idea that I like using it as it's having a voice and a choice.
Good phrase. I like that.
And it's a really nice way to think about, am I giving that person a voice and a choice? When I ask an athlete, what are your goals for this season? And they don't know because they need to go and ask their dad. They don't have a voice and a choice. When they actually, sometimes I might work with somebody and we'll realise that they just don't want to be doing their sport anymore. They've fallen out of love with it. They're missing the time they could be spending with their friends. They're not getting the enjoyment out of it that they used to. They might be much better in a different sport or a different hobby, but they know how much time and money their parents have invested in it and are almost too scared to be able to say that.
I mean, that's a fascinating one, isn't it? Because it's like sport is an emotional investment, and it is why sport plays its role in society for us. It emotionally, but it's pretty bizarre. I mean, why is it every 4 years at the Winter Olympics, all of a sudden we're really enthusiastic about large lumps of stone and 4 brushes? We're not at any other time, are we? But suddenly it's an Olympics and PB curling team, and we're actually pretty good at this, and we want our usually Scotsmen and women to represent us well. And so sport has does this bizarre emotional thing to it. And I think one of the biggest challenges for parents is how we make sure that our emotional exchange with support is not for our kids, because that is then when the kids feel like, because they know how much mum and dad have spent on it, you couple that with how emotional mum and dad can be about it, and that creates a very emotive reason for the kid to want to please mum and dad and keep going.
I think there's also a feeling from some parents that they know they've given up on things when they were younger and they regret it because they've got 15, 20, 30 years of regret behind them. So they quit their piano lessons at 15, and actually they realised if they'd have just pushed through, they could have been very good and they could still be doing it, and it could have been a great avenue for them. So they have all that extra perspective that of course their children don't, and they want to be able to pass on that perspective, but it becomes a battle, and that's not particularly helpful. And I'll often get in parent workshops, if my child wants to give up, how do I make them carry on? And my answer is you don't, because actually if somebody doesn't have that autonomy and if they don't want to carry on themselves, there's not going to be the passion behind it, they won't enjoy it, it becomes something they resent rather than something they love. And much as sport is brilliant, much as it brings us all together every 4 years or every World Cup, it is just sport. It's amazing, it does fabulous things, it isn't life and death. And there are bigger things than sport, and it can be, when you're in the midst of it all, it can be very hard to see that. But forcing somebody to carry on doing something that they're really not enjoying and they've got no passion towards anymore only causes deeper problems further down the line.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so your autonomy in smaller kids, I guess, is in part not packing their bags for them, not rushing them down to training.
So I will often suggest to some parents, perhaps it's time to step back right now and let them enter the competitions themselves. Because if they're not sure whether they want to do it, but you're constantly entering everything for them, they might well turn up, but they're not putting the effort in that you want to see. They're not there because they're desperate to do it. They're there because they're desperate to keep you happy and repay everything you've put in. So at times, yeah, it's let the kit go unwashed if they haven't put it in themselves. It's not packing their bags for them. It's not entering every competition. It might be printing off a list of all the competitions and saying, which ones would you like to do? Or which one would mean a lot to you to do well at? And we'll focus everything around there. But sometimes I might be working with 16, 17-year-olds, and it's the first time they've ever been asked about their goals. They've just done whatever their coaches or what their parents have pushed them towards. And if you're getting 16, 17 and not really understanding what matters to you, it's going to be very hard to make good decisions for yourself.
Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think it's not even whether they've just been asked, it's about that habit of goal setting as well, isn't it? And what that does. So, even the shutdown, we had a weekly routine, which I naively thought we'd have one routine, but we've got 3 kids, so invariably, we had 5 routines on the back of our dining room door. But at the end of each week, it's like, right, what have you done well at this week? What would you like to do better at next week? What do you think we can do? And just for me, my kids didn't realise that, but we were just practicing goal setting. And we're just doing a little bit of lockdown goal setting. I can't control much about lockdown. I haven't got a clue when we're going to go back or anything like that, but I can control if this week, if I was a bit naff at my French practice, I might be able to turn that up a bit and do turn a 3 into that. I mean, that's the phrase around my house. I don't care if you're not 10 out of 10. I just want to know, what are you now? Oh, 2. Okay, that's fine. How do you go about turning a 2 to a 3 if you want to?
Yeah. But I think the really key bit there is if you want to. Because sitting down and practicing lots and lots of French, if you never plan to go to France and you don't enjoy doing it and you'd rather be doing German, it's not going to help you. So helping kids set their own goals. So you can help them shape them. And when I work with athletes on that, they might set that outcome goal that really matters to them. But we'll break it down into performance goals or to process goals of what do they actually need to do in order to get there. And they might well need a coach or a parent to help them develop those. But that's okay because they set that big goal. That's what their mind is on.
So 2 questions there. One, you said, perhaps let them have the season's competitions and choose the kids they enter, which I think is a good model. But what if you as a parent know that they've overcooked and they've made too much demands on them? How do you, have I gone funny there?
Yeah, just quiet. Just say that question again.
Yeah. So you've printed out the schedule, the 20 tournaments, normally they're into about 10, but they're actually flying on their tennis, because I work in tennis, and they say, I want to do all 20. I mean, at that point, is it then the role of the parent to go, I love your ambition, however, that doesn't work with family life, and we need to down to 15? How would you have that conversation?
Yep, and that's absolutely fine to say. Have that negotiation, but it's them having, they're not going to have their full choice, but they are still going to have a voice in it. And you can at that point say, well, are there any that really matter to you? Is it that cup that you've always wanted to win that you really want to do it? Or is it that that's where that great doubles tournament is that you love? Or this one matters to you because it's high ranking and it will push you? So that they still get some choice in it and they've got that self-motivation. If it's someone picking them all, it's gone.
That's the negotiations.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I might be tempted to say, asterisk your best 5, top 5, and then can we look at the family diary and work out where we can we'll do those 5.
Yeah.
And we'll do those 5. And actually, that's very similar to parenting course material by brilliant Americans who used to say about changing kids' behaviours. Ask them to set where 5 or 6 behaviours they want to work on. Let's say, actually, we're not going to ask you to work on 6. Pick 2 you really like. And actually, what normally happens is they pick the 2 you parents want to pick them, but you say, can I do 1 as well? And then they feel like, well, I want to have more autonomy because you have narrowed it down now.
And I think it's really interesting that I look back at my corporate career, and that was where I fell down a lot. Was I felt, because I'd been through the whole process and I knew how to be a communications person, I felt everyone should do things the way I did them because I knew how to do it and I'd been there. And you look back in reflection, like I wasn't giving autonomy. I thought 4 and 4 equaled 8 and that's how you had to do it. But actually the team members knew that 1 and 7 also equaled 8 and so did 2 and 6. And it would have been a much easier, more fun, engaged team if I didn't care how anybody got to 8. They just got to 8 in the end.
So what does the parent do then? The parent who is trying to offer autonomy to their kid, but they're in a coaching environment that really is very autonomous.
So for the parent in that situation, it's about being as supportive as possible. The kid needs to know the parent is on their side, not their coach's side. You need people to feel like your team. And that's really tricky when you've got a really strict, tough coach that will only have things done certain ways. Over time, I would suggest that perhaps you shouldn't necessarily be working with coaches like that. And we've seen from some of the stuff coming out of gymnastics at the moment, when you have coaches that are incredibly strict and have to do things their own way, that's not healthy. And the kids were too scared to even have their parents on their own side and tell them what was going on.
It is that whole set of stuff we can spend all day because it's not just gymnastics, is it? I mean, although gymnastics has led the headlines, there are other sports as well.
Yeah.
Cycling has had a history of that as well. Which was going to link back into that question about autonomy and goal setting almost. You know, your kid sets a goal, I want to win an Olympic medal or gold medal, or playing a football World Cup or whatever. For me, I mean, my advice to parents has always been, even if you think that's ridiculous or unrealistic, that's okay. It's their children. And we need to help them have high but realistic expectations for their kids. So how do they completely know what that is? It's not as we as parents keep our feet on the ground. But I guess the challenge in that area of dealing with a very autocratic coach is that by pulling our kid from that environment, if there are no other avenues, we're removing them from that dream. That's really hard for parents, isn't it, to wrestle with those 2 issues. My child.
Yes, but I think the thing I always feed back to parents is it's athlete first. So it's person first, athlete second. An unhappy athlete is never going to perform well, and they're certainly never going to perform to their best. So the happiness of the athlete always comes first.
Yeah.
And so if they're in an environment where they're clearly not happy or they're clearly under an awful lot of pressure, it's just sport. It's not worth them being in that environment.
Yeah, I agree. I just recognise the challenge for parents in a very.
What you can do when somebody's setting a goal that you might roll your eyes out or laugh at because it's just completely, it might be very unlikely. It might be likely if lots of things happened, but is point out the distance of that. So most Olympic medal winners win a medal at the average age for winning an Olympic medal is 26. So actually that gives you a long time to get there. And so if you can start breaking it down as to, okay, well, to win a medal at 26, you'd need to be doing this at 20. You'd need to be on this pathway by 18. You'd need to be doing this, this, and this at earlier stages. You bring it back down to, where would you need to be in the next 6 months? Okay, how doable is that? And then that gives them something that's much more tangible and closer and feels like a stepping stone. And that might well be something to do with the coach, because the athlete will know the expertise the coach has. I find teenagers start to question their parents' experience and knowledge quite a lot. And occasionally I'll have parents who say, we don't have lots of money to get all these experts involved in our sport. So I've learned everything I can so I can pass it on to my children. And it's a really worthy endeavour, but it usually goes horribly wrong, because there are things we want from our parents, and that might well be around a brilliant background, learning how to deal with conflict situations when you're, say, on court and you know that your opponent is cheating and doing dodgy line calls, the usual one that comes up. So there are great things we can get from our parents, and the research shows kids tend to like their parents giving them advice about when they've been in a similar situation. So when I really struggled with getting on with my friends, as you're struggling with getting on with your doubles partner, this is something I did. That kind of advice gets taken very well. Technical advice gets taken awfully, because unless your parent won an Olympic medal in that sport, they don't have the respect for you in it. And so it is so much better to leave that stuff to them, leave that to the coach, leave that to other experts. You help them with different skills that they can do.
I love that. And I think one of the things I try and do regularly and try and encourage parents to do is be honest about when you're struggling. So at family meal times, how was your day? Yeah, my day was good. Actually, I had a team member today. It's just not clicking. I'm just trying to work out how to solve that. And I have to chuck it out to my kids. What do you think I might be able to do? And sometimes they come up with the obvious kid things that you've already tried, but sometimes they come up with blinding suggestions that weren't even. Listen, let's talk about your book before we finish. How would you review your own book?
So the idea for writing it was the book that I wanted when I did my master's course and didn't exist. So it was a how-to guide to be a sports psychologist. So it's written for coaches, for parents, for trainee sports psychs, to give you the 9 reasons people most often go and see a sports psych, and then loads of different activities that you can do. So it's kind of a pick and mix of the 9 chapters, and then each chapter finishes by, here are 10 things you can do, and you go to the back of the book and find out exactly how you would implement them and why it would work.
And I've got to say, you know, I got this 3 months ago, and I'm genuinely dipped into it weekly because it's so usable. I can tell your comms background. I didn't know your comms background. Your comms background comes through how you write it. I mean, it is just so useful, and it's not only why people see a sports psychologist. I mean, the issues: embracing competition, building confidence, sustaining strong support systems, improving concentration and focus, developing emotional control, becoming braver, pushing harder, learning from competition, coping with setbacks and strategies, achieving and setting goals. I would say that most things that I'm in as like a parent.
Yep.
They are. I mean, the biggest one I get back is setbacks and injury, but other than that, those others are all in there. They're the reasons why people do one-to-ones with me or provide speaking, or the questions people ask after my talks. It is the same set. So parents, I would highly commend this book because it's got it's really user-friendly, and there's just each of the strategies are just really, really useful and actually really easily transferable into larger children. And it wouldn't take much to transfer many of these into younger children.
Well, yes. So I'm working on it at the moment. It comes out in January. but a teenager's basically version of that. So it's a workbook that teenagers ideally can scribble all over, fill in lots of questions for them to reflect on. Loads of those 64 techniques are then turned into sheets or elements that they can use themselves. So it'd be great for parents to have that, to understand what they're working on. But then there's a more teenager-friendly book that's also got lots of well-known athletes commenting throughout it on some of those techniques and how they've used them. So it makes it resonate a bit more of, well, why should I do this?
Brilliant.
Well, because Rebecca Adlington did it and it really worked for her. So that comes out in January.
And that will be, and I'll put a note to this in the comments box below. I think it's a really, really good mindful, just excellent support tips that parents can just pick up, read the strategy, and straight away you'll start to see your child's issue is normal,
Yes.
and secondly, that there are little bits that you can plod on with. But we are talking about teenagers and children here, aren't we, Josie? So they don't get this all straight away. It does take time to build. So, you know, you do as a parent need to just keep dropping these things in. But it is that, I love it. Where can we find out more about you if we want to kind of, and I would really hope people would find out more about you.
So I've got a website called performanceinmind.co.uk. And actually there's a section on there called Performance Zone. And it's got loads of worksheets that you can download that are kind of the physical version of what's in the book to actually just be able to print out and give to your kids or work through with your kids so that they can start to develop some of those skills.
Brilliant. Excellent. That was a fantastic chat. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. If I can remind people, if they're new here, hit the subscribe button, comment, like, let us know what you think. Do feel free to share. This has been a fascinating chat and I really, really appreciate your time. Josie, thank you very much.
Thank you.